Hey, Mike, are you excited for Star Wars?
Yeah, a little bit, but I heard Ray is.
What do you mean?
You're watching Best of 3.
Awesome. Intense.
Hello and welcome back to another exciting episode of Best of 3, shot out of the Daily Dot Studios in Austin, Texas. I'm your host, Efren Salinas. With me, as always, is Super Jew Michael Donka Schiller. Hanukkah is over, but welcome regardless. And we're also have, of course, our producer, Radical Ray Chun. Ray, say hello. And let's not forget, Steven, Ace King Offsuit Jurek. Hey, Steve.
What up, guys?
Are you as excited about Star Wars as Ray is?
Maybe a little less. Just a hair.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to go through a couple of. If you follow the show, we don't always stick to the format, but we are going to talk about some of the things that happened over the weekend today, some of the news items, and let's get started with something that you wrote about, Steven, which is that Tekken tournament. Can you set it up for us? What exactly was it? I mean, because I was like, am I watching a Capcom Cup of Tekken here?
Pretty much. Tekken really, they've done big tournaments with the Master Cup, which has mostly been team tournament, but this was really their first big foray into an international championship. They had qualifiers in Japan, in Korea, in France, and in the U.S. They brought the top players all over to, all the way to Tokyo. Uh-huh. They had a one-day tournament with top 8, and they gave out some big money, $40,000, I believe.
I noticed that there were no non-Asian players there. I thought there was a legit scene in Tekken, like for instance in Houston, there's a Tekken scene.
There was an American player.
Oh, there was?
For sure. I mean, Mr. Naps was there. I know that at least.
Oh, okay.
And Bloodhawk was as well. There were 2 American players. There were a few people from Europe, but they did not get out of the pools.
Yeah, that's probably why I didn't see him.
But the other thing is, I mean, so you're saying there had been qualifiers for this tournament for a while, presumably?
Yeah.
Had anybody heard about that? I feel like I keep my finger on the pulse, and I'm embarrassed to admit I hadn't really heard about this Tekken thing. I watched it when it was on. I saw people tweeting about it, and I was like, yeah, I'll check that out.
Yeah, that was really one of the things that I heard a lot about. There's just not a whole lot of promotion, at least in the West, for it. Not nearly the level that we saw for Capcom Cup. Spooky was tweeting it out. They did fly out Markman and Eris to do commentary for the English stream. So
and Rip, if I'm not mistaken.
Rip, yeah. I missed most of the pools, so I missed most of Rip's work. But from what I heard, he did a good job. Eris and Markman did a great job over there. But they just didn't do quite the level of getting the information out there that you've seen some of these other championships do.
The thing is with Tekken in America is the scenes are very modular. Houston does have a big scene. Atlanta has a big scene. There's definitely a few people in New York, a lot of people in New York who play it. But the game just doesn't have the mass appeal here, which is interesting because in Asian countries, specifically Korea and Japan, the game is actually larger in arcades there than Street Fighter ever has been. And while Capcom has, dished out support for Street Fighter and gotten Capcom Cup as a stream, the real moneymaker has actually been Tekken. Really? Not necessarily as console sales, but as arcade sales. In Korea, it's like infinitely more popular. In fact, the Koreans have dominated the Tekken scene for a while, with the exception of a couple like Ao, the Japanese player who plays for Black Eye, and a couple other Japanese guys. But it's a lot bigger over there and in arcades in general.
So we're going to get into the reveal, right? What they did announce for the Tekken 7, the upcoming Tekken 7, but the question is, why isn't it more popular? That game looks pretty. It's fun to play. I certainly like it better than Virtua Fighter. Sorry, Virtua Fighter fans out there. Why doesn't it have a much bigger pool of players?
I really don't know, because you can't really say it's the gameplay necessarily, because as I said, in the Asian countries and in arcades, it's a more popular game. I'm not sure if it's because Street Fighter has a longer foothold. Street Fighter 2 came out on the Super NES, and Street Fighter was much more common and came out first, obviously, before Tekken ever was out, and just had a bigger name in America, and Tekken really never caught on. Tekken is definitely a lot harder to pick up and play. You have to to be good, you have to memorize all this frame data, and to even play the game as like a Mishima, you have to learn extremely complicated inputs to do like electrics and stuff like that compared to anything in Street Fighter 4. So I don't know if it's difficulty, if it's the way it looks, if it's the fact that we're not an arcade scene, but something has just gotten Tekken to be way, 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 way behind 2D games in general. I mean, pretty much even anime games are more popular here than Tekken is.
Now, the other thing that I find interesting is you see ArcSys coming out with the ArcSys Cup. You had the Capcom Cup as well, of course, we all enjoyed and saw. You have this Tekken King of Fighters, or I can't remember what the actual name of it was. Is that what everybody's going to do now? Everybody's going to, not that it hadn't been done before, but is there going to be more of a focus on these, let's support our games and then have an end-of-year tournament that is a celebration of the game and the community?
That's absolutely what I'm thinking. We've talked about for so long, how is the FGC going to blow up? Is the FGC going to get big? I don't think the FGC as a whole is going to blow up. It's going to be a Tekken blow up. It's going to be Street Fighter blowing up. It's going to be, maybe not Marvel necessarily, but it's going to be individual games that are doing it. And a lot of these companies are seeing what Capcom is doing. They weren't the first to do it, but they've been the biggest in terms of doing it on their own. And all of these different companies and organizations are figuring out, hey, maybe this is the way to promote our game. Don't necessarily rely on being the big thing at EVO. Let's make our own big thing.
I'm going to apologize to Nightscope2142V in the chat here. He is a Tekken fan, and he feels that nobody here on the panel follows Tekken.
I am definitely not a Tekken expert without any question of a doubt. I'll admit that.
I will tell you something that did get me excited, and I don't think I'm probably not the only one in this boat. The reveal of none other than, let me pull up this video here, of Akuma he's going to be in the game. Why not? How do you guys feel about that? I mean, he looks awesome.
I think it's really cool. One of the first questions everyone was asking was like, what does this mean for Tekken X Street Fighter?
Of course.
Because the big deal was when Street Fighter Cross Tekken was announced, they're like, oh, so cool. Like, we're also going to do Tekken X Street Fighter instead of just Street Fighter Cross Tekken. And it's going to be a Tekken game with Street Fighter characters. Is this what that turned into? Is there still going to be a Tekken Cross Street Fighter? I would lean towards the former. It seems like they're probably just going to put their eggs in this basket at least before releasing that. I think as long as Capcom, I think, has a decent vested interest in putting Akuma in here, and obviously Tekken will get a couple buys for people who want Akuma on consoles and a couple people on arcade and want to play him. I think it makes sense for both companies. I don't think anyone really cares if Tekken X Street Fighter comes out as long as it gets represented here. But I could be wrong. But I think this is a good idea, and I think this allows them to try out Street Fighter characters in Tekken without, making the leap that Street Fighter Cross Tekken failed so badly at making.
I think that you're hitting the nail on the head there, that was such a flop that it's like, yeah, we're not going to do that.
Honestly, when that game came out, I remember it coming out, and I knew, it wasn't going to overtake Street Fighter 4. I never thought that was going to happen, but I really thought everyone who played Street Fighter 4 was going to play Street Fighter Cross Tekken. It's the new Street Fighter game. It's the new Capcom game. Even Marvel, which has died down a little now, was huge when it came out. I mean, Capcom games were just known to get big. And then, what? No, the game was dead weeks later.
You were a big fan of Street Fighter Cross Tekken, right, Steve?
I bought it on midnight release. We all do things we regret. But
I did not hate the game.
It ended up good. It just... out the gate, it just wasn't where it needed to be, and that's a death blow in a market that's so flooded now compared to where we were 4 or 5 years ago.
The on-disc DLC and all kinds of other
things. There was a bunch of mistakes early on.
But that was then. This is now. I do think Akuma looks fantastic in
totally,
this game.
This is the right way to do it.
Yeah.
I would have way rather tried out a Tekken character in a Street Fighter game and had it not been that cool or worked out cool than gotten Street Fighter Cross Tekken and had it not succeed. It ended up being fine, and people played it eventually, and people liked it, but I think that this path is a lot safer and a lot smarter.
I saw somebody posted a video, and I'm going to play it behind us, and it's basically they compare the motions here. Granted, this is PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 3 era Akuma versus PlayStation 4 Tekken Akuma, but he looks He just looks so damn good, man. He looks so cool. He looks cooler than the new Street Fighter V graphics, that's for sure. Granted, Tekken has always had these really pretty graphics, but I just think it looks so damn good. It's putting
Is
Capcom
cool
to
an
shame.
objective thing, Efren?
It's so cool that it's cooler than other cool things.
I can see that.
That's my professional opinion on it.
One thing I wanted to say was that I was worried when they announced Tekken Cross Street Fighter that it would be much more difficult to incorporate Street Fighter characters into the Tekken world and make it viable and make it seem organic than incorporating Tekken characters into Street Fighter. The way that they've done Akuma here, all those worries are gone. He looks amazing.
Our resident chat Tekken expert, Nightscope2142, says, if you guys didn't know, Eliza from Tekken, is it Eliza or Eliza? Because this guy's...
Believe it's Eliza.
Nightscope's going to call me out on it if I don't get it right. From Tekken Revolution had fireballs, and people thought they were testing for Tekken Cross Street Fighter.
Oh, they had invincible moves in that game as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that game in general was a big test for, can free-to-play work for fighting games, and can we add stuff from Street Fighter to Tekken? And definitely, yeah, he's totally right on that front. And I can't say that I know exactly how it panned out, but I'm sure he could give more insight on how people felt about it, yeah.
So, okay, Tekken 7, cool. That tournament was
cool.
I
want to try it. As someone who's never seriously played a 3D game, I'm definitely 2D all the way. I definitely think Tekken 7 is the game I will try. I'm not sure how far I'll get into it, but I think I think adding Akuma, the general sense that I've gotten is that they simplified the game a little bit for the non-3D players. It's one player instead of two, which I personally like, because two, it just seemed a little harder for me to get into.
You mean like in Tekken Tag game?
Yeah, Tekken Tag was two characters. I mean, you could pick one, but it was way worse. Mm-hmm. So this seems a little bit easier for people to get into. So I hope everyone tries it.
Ray, who for the purpose of today we're calling Rayonetta, what do you think of Akuma in Tekken?
Well, my favorite thing is that they even incorporated him into the storyline where he is the assassin if the character fails to kill Hayachi.
Yeah, that's kind of badass, right?
That is like, you put a lot of detail into that. I put a lot of thought. It's just amazing. Not as cool as Bayonetta, but I mean, we'll get there.
Okay. Before we move on to the next topic here in our news section, I want to remind people that our guest tonight is AJ, the Evil Geniuses fighting games manager. And why does that matter? Because if you have any questions, you're a big fan of fighting games, and you're like, hey, how do I get sponsored? Well, guess what? After our interview, we're going to have a call-in segment, and you can call in and ask him your questions yourself. That'll be after this news segment. Okay. The next topic I want to talk about was NEC. You know, at first I was like, man, Street Fighter is not going to be hype because Capcom Cup is over and, like, people are spent, if you will. It was still hype. The whole tournament was hype, but what I want to talk about is Marvel, because I don't know if you guys know, we have a Marvel expert on the panel here. What did you think of Marvel, in particular, Vutra?
I thought the Marvel tournament was, I don't know if I'm going to get blown up for this, but I thought the quality of play was lower than we're used to in recent times, I guess.
Unpack that for me. What do you mean by that?
I don't want to individually call anyone out, but we saw a Vu who has not been playing the game as much recently. He's got a new job, get second place. He played very well.
So you're saying that the fact that Ramasama got second place
not the fact
indicates...
There was a lot of people in top 8 that were surprising to me, and I went back and saw some of the matches. K-Brad lost in pools to K-Brad lost to some people I did not expect him to. Clockwork lost to some people I did not expect him to. There was a lot of players there who kind of lost early for what seemed to be executional mistakes and various other things. That being said, I thought the grand final set was really awesome. I was glad Ramasama was on a tear for so long in this game. You know, like, he absolutely got top 8 at everything he entered, kind of fell off the map with his new job, and to see him, you know, come right back into it is cool. And Ray and him threw out a great set at the end with a 3-2 reset finish.
You know, a lot of people in the Marvel community have considered or called Ray one of the 3 top American players. Do you think that's fair to say? Does it even matter at this point?
It doesn't matter. That's exactly what I was going to say. To me, it doesn't matter. Is he? Yeah. You know, like right now, he got top 3 at EVO. He won this tournament with a bunch of people there who are very good. In the current state of the game, he is probably one of the top 3 players. And over time, he's definitely one of the top 10 players to have ever played the game. He's an amazing player. However, the game has definitely lost its edge for the top players. People are not practicing the way they used to. Some of our old, like, gods, you know, like PR Rog aren't even playing the game anymore. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's hard to to really care for me as a past Marvel player, I guess. But that's
So
not.
you don't
that's
see
not what
this and
is about.
say, that could be me. I should get back in this.
No, not at all. Not even
Raynetta,
slightly.
what was the prize pool breakdown for Marvel at NEC?
I am not too sure.
Oh,
about
okay, but
that.
just tell us who won then. I'm sorry, I thought you had that at your disposal.
All right, but yeah, Ray won that with first place, Ramasama second, and then PZ Poi, took it with third, and he's the one that actually took out Chris G.
PZ Boy's a really, really good player. Yeah, he's a Phoenix player. Zero Doom Phoenix is his typical team, and he's what's interesting about him as a Zero Doom Phoenix player is that his Doom's really good, which is surprising because normally you think Zero players aren't good with any other characters, Phoenix players aren't good with any other Phoenix characters, but he's one of the few that plays both those guys is actually good with his Doom. So I think it's about time that he does this well at a major tournament.
As a spectator, I still love watching Marvel. I know that playing it isn't as fun, maybe, but it's still a ton of fun to watch. And seeing the Hager shenanigans.
I think a lot of people at this point are just kind of depressed at what could have happened. Because I really do think every Marvel, including me, who's like a guy who just quit the game because they didn't like it anymore. I think everyone knows that it's pretty close to being like really, entertaining and to be played for a really long time. But the fact that the game doesn't get any support, you can't even buy it anymore. You can't even get the DLC characters anymore. Just like it makes you lose a lot of heart for it, know.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess people played Marvel 2 that long, so I'm sure there's going to be a Marvel 3 Sarah who will play this, and this game will be supported at tournaments for a long time to come because there's still a big scene for it.
Now, speaking of big scenes, and because I mean, and we're guilty of this. All we do is talk about Street Fighter and Street Fighter V and this, that, and the other. NEC had a huge turnout for a lot of other games, including some of your anime games. When I see that, I think
that's what it's known. To be fair, that is known as like the anime tournament.
Really? Wait, tell me more about that.
For a long time, NEC has been the tournament that has had, like people congregated at. CEO Otaku started this year as another anime tournament, which is really cool. But for a long time, like since so much of the anime scene is like gathered actually in Canada, in New York, and in Florida, it was a pretty central point in Philadelphia over there on the East Coast to get people together to play. And the first BlazBlue tournament I ever entered actually was at NEC in 2013, which I won. It was a team tournament.
Couldn't resist.
And it's been a gathering this year. They had a couple of Japanese players come out. They had a couple of Japanese players come out last year, and often not just for BlazBlue or Guilty Gear, but even for smaller games. So it's really cool that they do their best to draw in these players.
I want you to remember that this is a stacked tournament with varied games, because later we're going to retouch the subject. Let's talk about everybody's favorite topic on the show. No, not esports. Smash. There was a Nintendo Direct today wherein it's an official Nintendo live stream, and they revealed the final new characters, including the one that was voted on by the fans. And I did not pull the footage for Karin. Is that character's name from Fire Emblem?
I can't say I know exactly how to pronounce.
It's
probably like Colin in Japanese, I guess.
I don't even know. Speaking of Colin, and remember, later in the show. Anyway, Bayonetta. Cool, right?
Bayonetta does look cool, man.
She looks super cool. I'm not denying that. But is that what people wanted in this game?
Apparently, didn't she? Supposedly, she did very well in the fan vote.
Number 1 voted in Europe, top 5 in America, and I'm not sure what other specifics there. But the point is that of the characters that they could actually work into the game, she was the highest voted.
And she has some newish looking mechanics. She can fire the guns by mashing after her attacks, and she can like freeze time, and she looks unique.
The chat is saying that they wanted Britney Spears in this game.
That's who everyone wanted.
Just hit me, baby, one more time.
Colin is a little, or whatever his name is, Colin,
Karin,
and we'll call him Karin.
Kanzuki. What was it again, Steve?
I think it's Corin.
Corin. Yeah, that's it. Corin. Yeah, you were
Corin.
talking making corn jokes earlier. All right, Corin.
Okay, so Corin is, I think a lot of people are disappointed by that because it's another Fire Emblem character with a sword.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people were complaining about that 3 Fire Emblem sword characters ago. So it's very obvious at this point that Nintendo is advertising with their new characters, at least to some extent. I'm sure Square or whoever owns Final Fantasy at this point had a big part in saying, like, look, we'll give you Cloud because the Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming out. This Corrin is going to be in a new Fire Emblem game that's not out yet. Bayonetta was it on the Wii, I think, exclusive or something?
No, I remember playing it on the PlayStation 2 or 3, if I'm not mistaken. And then Bayonetta 2 was exclusive to the Wii.
Bayonetta 2 was
like that.
exclusive to the Wii, so they're kind of advertising at this point. And characters like King K. Rool or Banjo-Kazooie
That would have been much cooler.
or Shovel Knight were either old and not getting new games or multi-platform. And I think they had to jump through more hoops and didn't gain as much from it. And so that's why they went the way they did. And people were offended because they put a lot of these characters in as costumes for the Mii fighters.
I mean, that's better than nothing, right? And I did
Is
see some of
it?
those
Some people would
costumes.
argue otherwise.
Well, I guess I'm not a Super Smash Bros. Player, but the reason why I really wanted to bring up Smash is just because there's the tournament Genesis. Have you heard about this?
I have definitely heard of Genesis.
Okay, Genesis. I'm going to read to you some of these numbers for people, like confirmed people that are going to be competing at this tournament. Melee, 1,735 entrants.
Jeez.
Smash 4, 984 entrants. Super Smash Brothers 64, 203 people are going to be competing at it. First of all, you're impressed by that. It hasn't.
Most of our tournaments get 203 for any of the games. The majors will hit that for Street Fighter 4, but nothing else.
So then, can you imagine? And this is why I was talking about how an NEC has all these different games. What if there was? Do you think that a Street Fighter tournament that had Street Fighter 5, Street Fighter 4, and Third Strike could pull numbers like this?
They tried that kind of with 37 Reloaded. You know, they like had the older games, and they also had a 4 tournament, I think, on the side. I think the answer is no. There's a lot more overlap between games, I would argue, in the Smash community. Because the games
people play all of them.
There's clearly a lot of non-overlap. The Melee players are often only Melee players and stuff like that, and that's the most popular game. But there's more overlap. The game itself is more popular. Anyone who doesn't realize that at this point is out of their minds.
Melee.
Yeah, Melee is more popular than fighting games right now.
So that's actually why I bring it up. You know, it's like, are there any lessons to be learned, or is it just the fact that it's a Nintendo game that so many people play?
I think
that has
that's
it
a large part of it. You know, the fact of the matter is Street Fighter is awesome, and it has a lot of characters that people love, but it's still not Mario versus Sonic versus Link versus Cloud. It's a different group you're pulling from. It's people who like fighting games. It's people who grew up with Street Fighter as opposed to people who grew up with video games in general, which is who Smash appeals to.
So we're getting comments here in the chat that we're comparing apples to oranges.
Yes, I would totally agree.
Okay. Well, I'm not trying to compare Street Fighter as much to Smash as I am saying, what are they doing right? That's the question I have.
Maybe
I
we need
think
Cloud.
Yeah, we should get Cloud in all of our games.
Or Mario.
What do you say, Steve?
I think there's something to point out. This Genesis is more of a replacement, virtual replacement for Apex.
That is, I've heard that.
I remember all the issues that Apex went through last year, where they now have a change of ownership. They're going to a different point in the calendar, and Apex was the Evo of Smash before Smash was really a part of Evo. So this is kind of like if Evo could do just Capcom games, they would pull in these sort of numbers. Maybe not quite as strong, but it would still be a huge turnout for those games because this is a tournament on that level.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. It just seems like they have more tournaments that get to that level because they have the Big House now, got over 1,000 entrants. They had Apex. Now they have Genesis. They had the Summit, got stream viewers equivalent to way more than anything that we typically have other than Evo. And then they have Evo too. So, I mean, it seems like they're able to get people out to more stuff. But, I mean, yeah, there's definitely an apples and oranges element out there. And I think it's good for them to do well for the Street Fighter community as well. I think people watching Smash does point them in the directions of fighting games at least a little bit, and I can't see why it would be bad. So, I mean, you don't have to like Smash to respect the fact that people are coming out to tournaments to play it.
So if you think we're morons and think we're comparing apples to oranges, send a tweet, #best-of-3, and it'll show up right there, and I'll be able to see you calling me an idiot.
Please do.
The last thing I wanted to mention before we move on is the new, you mentioned that Apex changed organizer. There's a new owner of the entire Apex tournament series, and that is Bifuteki. He has taken over that entirely. You might know him as a streamer in the FGC. He is going to be running Apex now, and of course, actually I think they're hiring a streaming staff. We have an interview with him that you can see on our channel wherein we debuted our call-in feature. And he answers a lot of those questions about what happened to Apex and where it's headed and so on and so forth. So if you're interested, feel free to check that out. It's on our YouTube channel. Okay. Steve, thank you for joining us.
1 second. Are we going to talk about the Street Fighter 4, the Street Fighter 5 video?
I'm so sorry. I wanted you to break this down for us.
The last thing, and I figured both Steve and Ray will be very useful on talking about this,
Uh-huh.
would be that
Let me pull up
someone
the video.
while playing what I believe was likely the old version of the beta on their computer, and probably not the 2 minutes, found out that there is a priority system similar to Third Strike in Street Fighter 5. And I'll just break that down a little bit for people who haven't seen the video.
There's footage here. rolling
Yeah,
as you
definitely
talk.
feel free to watch the video. It'll go over it in depth, which is that if 2 moves are set to trade, which depending on whether you're plus or minus or block. So if you're +2 and throw out a 5-frame move and he throws out a 3-frame move, normally they would both hit each other, do the damage, and get the stun that you normally would. Sometimes you can combo off it, sometimes you can't. However, in Street Fighter V, the higher attack button wins.
Okay.
Even if they're the same speed. So regardless of whether they should have traded or not, if a Fierce is going against a jab, the Fierce will win. This allows them to not edit the frame data of a move, but still allow for more frame trap opportunities. So if you're...
Yeah, tell me how it actually looks in a fight. Like, how am I going to use this in a fight as
So
frame trap?
we'll use the example I said before. So if I do a move that's +2, like a close medium punch, and then my Fierce is, say, 5 frames and his jab is 3 frames, if he was mashing jab and I fierced him, we would trade. I might get a counter hit, but I probably wouldn't get a combo. Now, if I do that, because of this priority system, I will get the hit over his jab, counter hit him, and if it's a crush counter, get some hot, goofy combo. And so, yeah, I mean, this, I think to most people is a good thing. A lot of people complain Kazunoko was mashing jab like crazy the entire tournament. Not that it was bad, just like it's a very viable thing if they think you're going for a DP or something like this. This allows you more opportunities generally because there's a lot of moves that would trade in these situations to frame trap people, and it will make the game slightly less mashy. Now this has been in Street Fighter V the whole time, I assume, and we just didn't notice it, but it's good to know, and I think it's a good change, and it was in Street Fighter 3, so it's back.
We'll see if it sticks around. Presumably that could be changed before final release. But yeah, I think that's cool. I was actually saving that for in between our guests later. But I'm glad you brought it up. This video is on YouTube. Oh, man, I'm blanking on the name of the guy who posted it, but you should definitely check it out. Street Fighter 5, Third Strike, similar system.
If you look up priority, like button priority Street Fighter 5, it's been posted on Event Hub, it's been posted on Shoryuken. I'm sure you'll find it.
Yeah, give this guy some love. Okay.
I've got the
Steven.
link. I'm gonna put it in chat right now.
Steve, thank you so much. That's why we like having you on here. You're a monster in that chat, man. Thank you. Ray, did you have any thoughts as well? I'm sorry, Ray and Etta, did you have any thoughts on this Third Strike-esque priority system that they have in Street Fighter 5?
I mean, like Mike was talking about, it does help with the frame traps and kind of prevents people from mashing. You kind of understand the system. It's a new thing to work towards. I like it because 4 was definitely not like this, so it's complete turnaround from 4 to 5, and it should be a lot of fun.
Cool. Steve, thank you so much for joining us for our news portion of the show. We are going to bring on now AJ, Antonio Javier. 2 first names for your first name and your last name. That's how you know you're cool. So, Steve, thank you very much for joining us. And joining us soon, in a little bit, as soon as our producer Will gets him on the line, will be AJ. So we're going to talk to him, of course, about how his team did this year, whether that's a concern or not, whether they win or not is relevant. I've personally heard him say that it doesn't matter if they win as long as they're likable. So we're going to put it to him.
I'd like to hear what it's like in general to be in the non-playing part of esports. I mean, obviously, we are here hosting a show. Steve writes for the thing, and this guy manages a team. So there's obviously a lot of opportunities. ESPN just finally, chose their editor. So there's a lot of opportunities out there in esports that aren't playing, and I think there's a lot of people who care about that. So
Sure.
I'd like to hear more about that.
I mean, but when you watch like an NFL football, are you there with us, AJ? Okay, we're gonna bring on AJ, Antonio Javier, who is the Evil Geniuses Fighting Games manager. AJ, are you with us?
Yep. Can you guys hear me all right?
Hey, AJ, how you doing, man? Where are you holed up? Is that EG headquarters?
Yes.
I imagine with a name like Evil Geniuses, it's like at the core of a volcano or something, and it opens up in a rocket, a nuke flies out.
Our lab is actually just around the corner over there.
AJ, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's start off with this. Capcom Cup. Justin Wong, 0-2. What happened? How do you feel about that as his manager?
In all honesty, like I was concerned right off the jump, just because historically, Justin against those guys just has not been a good look. Of course, I've all the way through Capcom Cup itself, I was monitoring his practice progress, and he actually took a week off of work. He actually works currently full time at NVIDIA. And he took an entire week off of work to practice, not just by himself in the lab, but he actually had some people over to practice with him. Like I know Hamad was there, Adil, the NorCal folks came over to try to help him out, and then I believe it was Fawaz that actually tried to give him some Viper training also for Tompi, but we all know how that worked out.
Right.
He walked into Capcom Cup and into a ton of burn kicks.
That was a lot of burn kicks that he ate, and it's interesting because we had him on the show about a week before Capcom Cup, if not just around that time, and he was telling us my first match is C Viper, my characters beat C Viper free. And then we did our Cap Cup, trying to guess who's going to win in the brackets, and based on that, we're all like, nah, Justin Wong's got this, and then it wasn't that. I don't think I've ever seen anybody eat that many burn kicks. Obviously, we're here to talk to you and about you, but give us your take. How did he take all that?
So when I talked to Justin about it, of course, he talked a lot about how he was preparing for it. Obviously, he plays two characters that are very capable of dealing with Viper. So in all honesty, as far as his mindset goes in the middle of that match, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I think he just kind of, the pressure just got to him. I mean, that's really all I can say about it. I really believe that he was 100% prepared for that match and for the entire tournament in general. It sucks. he buckled. That's really all I can say about it.
The interesting thing I'm taking out of that is, Justin is normally obviously very confident in fighting game tournaments. He's been doing this for a long time, winning for a long time. Did any of your players throughout the season or with Justin during Capcom Cup come to you and say that they were nervous going into this? Was this tournament, enough to finally, make Justin nervous?
Absolutely. In fact, both Justin and Momochi told me they were crazy nervous going into this tournament. And it's not really something I look at negatively. In fact, I would have preferred them to be nervous going into it, because if they go in, 100% confident, then you start feeling like, oh, hey, I'm not going to need any sort of preparation, and I'm just going to go in and body everyone. Mm-hmm. I mean, of course, that's what Knuckle Dude did, but 9 out of 10 times, it's probably not the result you're going to get from somebody that doesn't prepare for something like this. So, both of them told me they were crazy nervous.
Are you sure Momochi wasn't nervous because he was going to propose to Choco after Capcom Cup?
From what they told me, that was something they were planning already. It's just, from our perspective, Momochi turned out to be the guy that lost but still won in the end.
Absolutely. Because the real reward is love.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
AJ, let's take a step back, because I have a bunch of questions about what EG is planning for next year and things of that nature. But let's take a step back in case anybody doesn't know you. I had a chance to meet you for the first time at EVO, and I think I asked you how you got your job, and you basically said that you were writing about fighting games. Is that right?
Yep, that's 100% correct.
How does that turn into, being the manager for one of the most storied, popular fighting game stables of players in the game?
So, and it's funny. I love and hate this question at the same time. Mike Ross is gonna kill me because I'm gonna give you the same answer I've always given people, but. All it is I got lucky. I got an opportunity and I took it, and I've been here ever since. Like you were saying, I was freelance writing for EG for about 2.5 years, and they really liked what I did. So they saw an opportunity where they needed somebody to step in and manage the players as another manager was stepping out. So I took it. And I've been here ever since.
And what exactly do you do? And I'm going to roll some footage of all the Evil Geniuses players at EVO sitting at a table signing autographs.
Can you repeat the question?
What do you do as the manager of this team?
Oh, The bulk of what I do is really just booking events and tournaments for them, scouting out events and trying to, in this year's case, trying to strategize, how many events I send them out to and which events I send them out to, just to kind of divvy up the points that way. It worked actually magnificently last year. I mean, if you recall Capcom Cup last year, I got 4 out of the 5 main players in. Really, the only ones that didn't make it in were K-Brad and Choco, but I don't really expect Choco to be at a Capcom Cup type event. No, that's not what she's there for. Besides that, it's making sure that they show up to sponsor-related events, like you're seeing in the video. BenQ wanted to see them out there, so I made it happen.
You mentioned that that's not what Choco's out there for, and I think everyone's heard quotes from you at this point that you don't necessarily draft solely based on results, and that's not always what you're looking for out of your players. Could you elaborate a little bit on what it makes an EG player?
What makes an EG player? That's a great question.
Solid.
The funny answer to that is an EG player is a Justin Wong friend. In real talk, to be an EG player really just means that you're an amazing player. You know the ins and outs of whatever game you're playing. And at the same time, you're a person that loves to be out there and loves to be vocal, which is something our sponsors love. In fact, I can tell you that our players have a very friendly relationship with all of our sponsors, like Monster, for instance. Like, after an event, we'll go out to drinks with them and, just kind of shoot the shit, if you will. But yeah, I mean, that's really it.
So I want to remind our viewers that you can call in and ask AJ your burning questions about how to get signed one of those $1 million contracts that you guys hand out for your Street Fighter players. So remember, you can call in and we'll hear you live on the air, and AJ will answer your questions. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Street Fighter V, because one of the things the discussion here also is relevant to have is getting sponsored. Obviously, we're talking to the manager of a team. If you're not friends with Justin Wong, what are your other avenues? What would you recommend? I mean, Street Fighter V is around the corner, right?
Yeah. I'm going to say something, and it's probably not going to be the popular thing to say, but I do get this question a lot. I mean, not even just from interviews or anything like that, but from people that don't follow esports, that want to know what's going on, right? So what I tell most people is the esports scene is a lot like, professional sports. It's easy to pick up a basketball and shoot it at a hoop, but it doesn't necessarily mean that although you're the best thing on the block, it doesn't mean you're going to make it in the NBA. It's kind of the same thing with esports and fighting games, right? You can pick up a stick and be amazing at it and be able to do one frame links, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get picked up by a sponsor. My suggestion for anyone that's aspiring to be picked up by any professional gaming team is really that's obviously the first step, is to pick up a game, be adept at it, and compete well enough to get results. That's really, I would say, half of step one. The other half of that is to win tournaments, which leads to the other steps, which is building up a fan base, getting on stream, which I would say is really the key to being sponsored. If you have a huge following, either on Twitter, Twitch, what have you, that's really the empirical evidence you need to get picked up by someone.
So do your sponsors care more if your player is on stream or wins a tournament, is I guess the question then at that point?
I think it depends on the player. When it's someone like Choco Momochi, obviously Momochi is somebody that's, generally pretty quiet, at least, in the public eye. I've spent enough time with him to know dude is freaking hilarious. But obviously he's someone that we look to be, the player that wins these tournaments. But then you look at someone like K-Brad, and, he's someone that people can relate to, people can watch and be very entertained with. So it it's a different. I guess it's not. There isn't like a real like checklist. It really depends on a player by player basis, at least from my perspective.
Infiltration got signed by Razor. Are there any players that get signed that you're like, damn, I wanted that guy?
That happened a few times this year, actually. And if I could be a little candid,
Sure.
this year, and I know this is probably going to lead to a different question I probably would get later anyway. But in an ideal world, I would have the players that I want. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And there's higher ups that I need to kind of convince to make that happen. But in an ideal situation, my roster would actually be Justin Wong, Infiltration, Kazunoko, and Momochi. Those would be my 4. But yeah, I actually talked to Infiltration on a pretty regular basis, and I was ecstatic for him when he got picked up by Razor. But also, there was a side of me that was like, man, if only we could have made that happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, because the thing is, in like, for instance, League of Legends. I've mentioned on the show before that I'm in a Slack chat full of esports guys, and all they're talking about is League of Legends and the roster changes and this, that, and the other, and the crazy negotiations, and how these are like months and planned in advance and in secret and don't tell him and this, that, and the other. Is it getting like that in the FGC where you guys are actually having to compete for these names? I imagine an Infiltration would be somebody to fight over.
I don't think so. And I wouldn't be able to tell you an answer to that and why that's happening, because if people were fighting over players, Kazunoko would have been sponsored by a legit team a long time ago. Same thing with Bonchan before he got sponsored by Red Bull, and we were mentioning Infiltration before he got signed by Razer. I think you're going to see a paradigm shift in the new year, especially because Street Fighter V is going to be on PC. I think you'll see a pretty dramatic progression from all of these guys that are currently unsponsored or, not necessarily sponsored by the right people, to get sponsored by a legit company.
AJ, I want your opinion on one more question before we get into the future Reveal Geniuses. Earlier this year, Kazunoko was signed by a Team Zevron, which, if you've been following the scene for any amount of time, know that it no longer exists.
Yep.
And it was a ton of egg on the face on that one. When stuff like that happens, what goes through your mind?
A lot of sadness.
Would you say profound sadness?
Profound sadness, most definitely. Really, because I see a lot of these guys at events, and a lot of them I've befriended. I always tell people I'm a fan first, before I'm a manager.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks to see stuff like that happen. Kazunoko's a great dude. He definitely deserves the best. He's a freaking champion now. He's a world champion now, and there still isn't. He's still not sponsored. I think he's actually sponsored by the company he was representing at Capcom Cup. I forget what they were called. I think G-Tune. They're like a Japanese PC retailer or something or other. But it sucks to see that type of stuff happen. You hate to see this type of thing happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I've been seeing tweets from somebody like Alex Valle saying, hey, team tournaments, team aspects of fighting game tournaments is going to blow up in the future. You are the manager of one of the most popular teams in fighting games. What does that actually mean? Do you have any insight on that? Why would all of a sudden teams be a little more popular? And is that something you guys are preparing for?
I don't really see it yet, simply because, like I was saying earlier, I don't think the interest is quite there yet. I think we're getting there, but that's definitely not something that I'm really kind of considering yet. But if it were to happen, I would definitely be looking to bolster our roster a little more than it is now.
What moves are you planning? Street Fighter V is around the corner. You said that sometimes you have to fight the higher-ups. We've seen players on EG come and go, like a Flo, although it sounds like it was of his own choosing. What do you have to do to get kicked off of Team Evil Geniuses? And does that need to happen for you to have space to bring on somebody new?
The thing with Flo was a mutual decision. It was just kind of a situation where I spoke with him about his future with the company as his contract was expiring, and he didn't really express any interest in competing at a high level anymore. So it was just kind of a mutual decision to move on from him into someone else, which at the time was K-Brad. And then what was the other part of that question?
Do you need somebody to get bumped off the team so that you can fill it with somebody new?
I don't think so. I think right now we're still in a pretty good place, considering that all of our players are they're very keen on picking up new games and being really, really good at it. Justin is pretty much the perfect example of this. You know, a new fighting game will come out and he'll be the best for a few weeks and just kind of fall off a little bit. But once he falls off, another member on our team picks up where he left off. I kind of like how that kind of works out because it keeps the team relevant. But yeah, I think right now we're pretty much in a good place until someone really shows up as, you know, the god of Street Fighter V, which I don't think we'll get to for like another 2-3 years.
AJ, you also sponsor probably one of the best Smash Brothers Melee players on the planet, PPMD. We're talking about the future here. Smash 4 is blowing up. We were quoting some of the numbers of this Genesis tournament that has, if I'm not mistaken, like
Almost 2,000 Melee
almost
players.
2,000 people just for Melee. Smash 4 is also picking up a ton of steam. Are you guys looking to pick up some more Smash players?
Not at the moment. In all honesty, I'm 1,000% happy with Kevin, PPMD. He and I have a great working relationship. I love working with the dude. He loves working with me. I mean, he's a guy that can literally show up out of nowhere and compete at the top level. You saw it a couple times already this year and last year with Apex. No, that was this year too. It happened at Apex. It happened at Evo. It'll happen again at Genesis. I guarantee you that. And again, like he's someone like I was talking about earlier. Even when he's not competing, he stays relevant by talking to his fans, and he's got a ton of fans. So that's something I've been very pleased with as far as Kevin's concerned.
It seems like you have a close personal relationship with all the members of your team. I mean, and you don't really seem to censor them at all. PR Rog has come out and said he hates Street Fighter 4 now and all this various other stuff. Has there ever been a time where you've had to like be like, you know, like, whoa, like calm down there? Like, has the management part ever extended to the point where you have to, you know, talk to your players about what they're saying on social media or what they're doing on stream and stuff like that?
I mean, I've told them all to stop playing Marvel.
You're breaking his heart, man. Come on.
I trust my guys enough to really expect that they'll behave the way I kind of want them to. I don't like to micromanage them, which is why I like my roster so much, because these are guys that really know how to conduct themselves publicly. And in all honesty, I've been very fortunate to have that, where in other spaces it's not so easy to find a player that, you know, that willing to be kind of a role model to others. I think my guys just kind of take on this mantle on their own. So as far as like disciplining them when something goes awry, that's definitely happened before. Although I wouldn't be able to give you like an exact scenario when that happened, but you know, I definitely discipline my guys every now and then.
You haven't teased us with anything. What do you guys got planned? So you're not picking up any more Smash players. Your fighting game roster is going to stay about the same. Is there anything you can tell us about EG in 2016?
In all honesty, there really isn't anything brewing right now because, I mean, like we've been talking about already, Street Fighter V is coming out, and that's going to be the marquee game. It would be kind of foolish of me to kind of shift the roster around when there's a new game coming out with, you know, pretty solid players. I think it'll take a little while for me to really identify another player that I would need on the team because it's not a decision I take very lightly. You know, I see my team as, you know, an extended family, if you will. And I like to keep things pretty much the same. But, you know, if there's a breakout player that really comes out running when Street Fighter V comes out, of course I'm going to pay attention.
And they just need to hit you up on Twitter and then next stop, signed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I come out to events pretty frequently, so I mean, more than likely I'll see you before you see me.
Okay, I have some bad news here. We don't have a single call for you, AJ. Nobody wants to call in and ask you. Maybe it's because our questions are just so damn good that you've answered anything that anybody would want to ask.
People who's saying Flo wants to call
Flo,
in.
people are saying Flo wants to call in, but if he doesn't call in, I won't see it on this screen. I won't be able to bring it up.
Does Flo really want to call in? Yeah, Adam on the call.
You're just gonna bring him on?
I was gonna bring him on.
That'll make us. We'll have to do a different little graphic there for him. But is there anything that we haven't asked you about that you think is relevant to the topic? Esports and FGC are colliding, whether we want to or not, whether we think it's a good idea or not. Certainly, Capcom wants that to happen. And again, as we've pointed out, the majority of your fighting game players or Street Fighter players are Capcom fighters. Do you think that that's necessary? Do you think that that's a step in the wrong direction? Is it one of these topics where we're looking at it the wrong way, and the FGC will continue to be like an MMA to the NFL that is League of Legends or something to that effect?
I think, and I was talking about this with Valle not too long ago, but I definitely think there's bound to be some growth, some exponential growth, if that, when 5 rolls around, simply because it's going to be on PC. It's again, you'll see that paradigm shift from people playing it on console to playing it on the PC because they don't have a PS4. Along with that, you'll see a lot of different PC sponsors really starting to pay attention to Street Fighter because it's so damn popular.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about like the Steel Series and the Razors, although of course Razer is heavily invested in the FGC. But I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, not at all. But yeah, I mean, you'll see a lot of companies that don't currently invest anything into the fighting game community to really pay attention to this new Street Fighter PC community and want to kind of get their hands wet too. I mean, you'll only see it go up from here, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
One more question I have is that currently, the way fighting games typically work is that we have these big open brackets. So if you have a player sponsored, you can send them out and they'll be there and they'll probably get their time on stream. Capcom Cup opened up a new window, of these invitational tournaments where obviously your player needs to be good enough to get invited to get on the stream to appease your sponsors. With that likely being the direction we're going, if the biggest tournaments that people watch are invitationals, will training regimens for your players and making sure they make it to the big stage be a bigger deal as the future goes on?
It's definitely a different kind of training regimen to train for an Evo than, let's say, a Red Bull Invitational, right? Because you're going to have to, for something like Evo, you're going to have to train yourself to have that stamina to go from day 1 Friday to finals day on Sunday. Evo's definitely a lot more grueling than anything else I've ever witnessed. We actually, within Good Game, we helped Twitch do the South by Southwest Fighters Invitational.
Which was awesome, by the way, and we loved it here in Austin.
I'd like to see more things like that happen, most definitely. I think that you'll see a lot more of that this year. And as far as getting my guys to train for stuff like that, really it's more just a matter of them watching a lot of tape, matchup specific type stuff. Whereas, like I said, when you train for Evo, you're training for stamina, not necessarily for character matchups. You kind of do that as you progress through the tournament. I don't know. Did that answer the question?
It did. I mean, we're excited about the future of EG and what things are going. It was a little disheartening, and not disheartening in the sense that it was sad to hear a guy like Dominion, for example, say, I wasted the last 7 years of my life. It was sad to see PR Rog say that he's got tears in his eyes and he doesn't like the game anymore. It's sad to see Justin Wong say, I'm a scrub at this game after he went 0-2. Like, that shit hurts. It feels bad as a fan of the game and as a fan of watching the streams. At least I'll speak for myself. I hope that doesn't deter them from Street Fighter V, that they come back invigorated. Your take on that? I mean, did Street Fighter 4 take it out a lot? Did it take a lot out of this old blood that was in the game?
I think that what happened with Street Fighter 4 was that things just got so advanced that players, and again, I really hate to say this, but players like Justin just couldn't catch up to the high level of play that everyone else kind of exhibited at Capcom Cup. It definitely broke my heart a little bit when, well, not a little bit, a lot actually, because Justin sent me a text first before he even tweeted that out. But it definitely breaks my heart when I see my players, so dejected like that. I definitely think that Street Fighter V is going to breathe a lot of life into a lot of these guys. The fact that they're all new characters and all new different techniques you can pick up in a new game, like that stuff is exciting. So I think that you'll see. I mean, it's definitely not the end of Justin. It's definitely not the end of someone like Dominion. You'll see them pick up this game, and you'll see them thrive in it. If only because it's a brand new game. They've got a pretty good mental edge against most opponents, and they have the fundamentals that you need to be a proficient player with Street Fighter V.
AJ, unless you have any more questions for him, Donka, I wanted to thank you for your time on the show. Unless is there anything that we didn't ask you about that you want to bring up? If not, we can wrap it up.
I wanted to actually shout some people out, if that's all right.
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's get some shout-outs going.
First shout-out I wanted to give out was to the boys in Australia, Shadowloo Showdown. They're ending their Shadowloo Showdown series there. It breaks my heart because I love sending my guys out to that. So shouts out to Ali, Boss Logic, Soul, everyone out there. My heart's out to you guys. And of course to my players, Justin, Ricky, Ed, K-Brad, Momochi, Choco, Heaven. Yeah, that's really it.
AJ, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sorry we didn't get any calls for you, man. But again, you answered everything, I guess.
Better for me.
All right. Thanks, AJ. We'll see you next time, man.
See ya.
He brought up the Shadowloo Showdown thing, and that was one thing that we skipped over. We do actually have one more guest, so stick around. But in the meantime, I reached out to the guys. I was like, do you guys have a comment or anything? Because I'm not sure they've 100% confirmed why they're quitting. It sounds like maybe it's just too much of a burden / financial concerns. But they responded to me saying, it's very hard to say goodbye, but we hope everyone enjoyed it and will remember the great moments from Shadowloo Showdown. I remember
we talked about Ramasama earlier. He traveled out there. I know he's got a cousin in the area, and he beamed about how it was one of the best tournaments, best experiences. It got a lot of, obviously being on, the eastern side of the world, it got a lot of Asian amazing players out there that we didn't always get to see. It's a little more common to see them in American tournaments now, but it was still always, the really good Japanese players who didn't get to come to America would show up to Shadowloo Showdown. So it's kind of sad to see another one of those tournaments go down. But, I'm sure something will pop up in Australia to take its place at some point.
Yeah, you got to. To me, it's a reminder that hey, look, fighting games are on the up and up. Esports, this, that, and the other. It's still there's people behind all these things that are putting in that work, and they have lives and the same concerns that everybody else has. If
you go to a fighting game tournament, the people selling stuff there still aren't major companies. It's people within the fighting game community. So for these tournaments to stay alive is really hard. They rent out these big venues and they get more people, but a $50 entry fee or whatever isn't necessarily enough to cover what it costs to have a person at the event.
We were talking about Genesis earlier. Do you know how much the venue fee is?
How much is the venue fee, Efren?
$100.
Oh, Lord. People were complaining about Evo when it hit 50 and then again when it hit 70. Geez, they're getting pretty big. And yeah, these are vacations for people at this point. And most of the people going aren't there to win the tournament. They're there to see everything. So, I don't know what justifies that much money. I guess it just depends on the person.
Well, what is the opposite of a 2,000-man tournament? An invitational with 8 men. And we have somebody here to talk to us about his first invitational tournament that he is hosting out of his garage, if I'm not mistaken, his garage studio. Just so happens that the garage is the studio. He's
That's
a friend
right,
of the show, a friend of ours, Jonathan Panda Othone. Panda, welcome to the show.
Hey, Efren, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate you tagging me in the end of the show.
Absolutely, man. You said, hey, I want to talk about this invitational, and I said, hey, talk about it on the show. So we're glad you're here. Panda, first let me bust your balls a little. Just like Bifuteki is known as an FGC streamer, you as well are known as an FGC streamer. What's happening in Smash that you're going to host a Smash tournament?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious, it's a pretty large community. And, for that alone, to me, I see that as a huge playground for me. Like, my thing in the FGC is production. So I'm constantly working to produce more content, stream more events, and pretty much everything I've ever had to do was out of state. And it's just because there's a lack of a community here for like Street Fighter, and obviously like Street Fighter.
And you're in Arkansas, right?
Yeah, I'm in Arkansas. So really, with Street Fighter being the only game that I really kind of put myself around in the community, as far as getting to know people, that's the game. There's really not much of that here left in Arkansas. So traveling out of like town and stuff, and not really getting to practice for my production except for events out of state sucks. So I found out there's a Smash community here, like a huge, large, thriving Smash community. So I wanted to get in, and I wanted to do some things production-wise, just kind of have a playground, and they have a large enough community to make that happen.
I'm going to run the trailer here over us while you talk. Now, the idea that you saw that there was a community, you saw that they wanted somebody to stream, do you feel like, I don't want to sound, how can I put this? Are you exploiting the existing community, or are you saying, I see an opportunity for me to help this scene grow?
Oh, no doubt. It's kind of both. Like I see it as an opportunity to kind of really help grow the the Smash community here. And with that, I'm going to be able to bring, the Marvel, the Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat X community up as well. Because there are players that play that game. It's just that, like, my ultimate goal, really, all in all, is to get back into running tournaments in Arkansas. So with the Smash Invitational thing that I'm doing, the reason, obviously I'm doing that is just because they've already got an established player base. They have their own PR, their ranking system. So I was able to take it. I looked at it and I was like, man, this is really impressive. Like I don't have to do anything as far as determining really who is invited into the tournament. Let's just look at the rankings, So they already had that stuff set up, so it kind of made it easier. And I was like, before the end of the year, let's do this thing. Let's do a special invitational. It'll help give you guys exposure. It'll help me pull out the first event here at my home studio, and win-win in every other direction. And I think it's gonna be fun.
So, we've been talking on the show, and you were bringing it up earlier, the whole idea of the Invitational being in the new format. It's like concentrated energy, right? You can have it all right here. It's easier to manage. You have control over everybody. Pros and cons here, in your opinion. Would you want to go? Would you participate in an 8-man Invitational?
To me, it sounds awesome as a player also. If you're at the top of the rankings and you're practicing to get better, normally your enemies aren't the guy in state if you're trying to compete at a national level. So, yeah, if I could gather the best 8 other players in my state and play with them all weekend and, get stream viewers out of it, get practice out of it, sounds like a win-win to me.
Panda, you've thought of all this, right?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I've put a lot of notes down on why I want to do this. I'm also the type of guy, like, I like to do kind of just more, feature event type stuff too. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, you've always done your the fight nights and things of that nature, and I guess it's an extension of that.
So obviously, I just wanted to add,
by all means,
these are people in Arkansas, and specifically people in Arkansas. You said that your goal was to get something started in your home state. When you stream this, is the goal mostly just to get local people to watch it? Is it to shed light from the entire nation on your scene? Who are you trying to reach out to by streaming this? And I know you're trying to get practice for yourself, but who are you trying to reach?
Both, really, locally and nationally or internationally, to be more exact. So the way I set this up was, I'll go ahead and just give you guys insight on how the players were invited, and that kind of leads into how I wanted to advertise the event itself. But 4 players were automatically qualified based off of the 4 highest rankings in that PR, right? Yosh, Cheeseballer, Red Tux, and Dan B were all automatically qualified into it. And then the last bit of players were qualified via popular votes. So it was an open poll. So anybody could vote in the poll. And I wanted it like that because with the event, I wanted to create a competitive event with the best, but I also wanted to be able to create a viewing spectacle. So I wanted those players to, have their family, their friends, everybody vote for them to be into the tournament. And, with that, those people are going to tune in. So that's going to be a really big local audience, even outside of, just typical fighting game community stuff or just the video game audience. You're going to see a lot of different people that watch football, basketball tuning in. And that's kind of what I wanted. Whereas I'm also, part of my ad campaign is targeting an international audience too.
So it's an 8-man invitational. It's being hosted in your own personal studio. It's on your stream. When and where can we watch it?
This Saturday, 7 p.m. on twitch.tv/PandaXGaming. Yeah.
Is there anything we didn't cover that you want to mention?
That's pretty much it, man. I just wanted to thank you guys for letting me jump on the show, and tag on last minute and whatnot. So, and talk about the tournament. I hope everybody tunes in. Efren, I hope to see you in the chat tuning in as well.
Absolutely.
You too, Mike, Ray, everybody in the studio.
He's Rayonetta today. Ray, will you be
Ray
in the chat? Oh, I'm sorry. I think he has turned into Darth Raider now. So he's all over the place. Thank you, Ray. That was a very nice Darth Vader impression of you just holding that mask up.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our show. Thank you very much. Sorry, did I miss
the
something?
only thing, and I know I interrupt the end of the show every time, I would like to add is that I saw an article today on one of the fighting game news websites, which basically stated that Capcom has a vested interest this time around in making sure the leaderboards are accurate and making sure that the matchmaking system is proper. In many other games, the matchmaking system is actually how you get invited to the qualifiers for the major tournaments. So online's a big deal and stuff like that. And I think if we could have something like this, where you got the top 8 guys on the leaderboard in there for a round robin, that would be super awesome. If the leaderboard is what they say and it can't be hacked and it actually matters online, I think these sort of invitationals could maybe go there. Maybe I shouldn't have told anyone and streamed it myself.
Well, I mean, it sounds like what you're describing would be an online tournament, though.
Yeah, an online
because
invitational.
The top 8 could be from anywhere.
Yeah.
And I know somebody who has streamed many an online tournament. Panda, that's you, buddy.
Yeah, I've done it a couple times, quite a few times.
Yeah, hit up the brackets or the leaderboards and just invite them out, man. Online tournaments.
I totally should. Maybe when Street Fighter 5 drops, let's get the rankings. Let it be out for a few months, and let's just do an invitational. The netcode is supposed to be promising, so I think that could be possible.
We shall see. Anything else, Duncan?
I think I'm good.
All right, cool, guys. Thank you very much for joining us on this night's Best of 3. If you missed any of it, it'll be up on YouTube. I'm your host, Efren. As always, Michael Donka Schiller with his beautiful, beautiful, even though Hanukkah is over, sweater. I mean, you're ready for Christmas.
I always am.
Panda, thank you very much for being on the show. And also thank you to Steve and Ian, who was screening calls and did not have much to do. And Will, our technical director. And, of course, Darth Raider. Good night, guys.